I think we all got in just in time before that downpour. So we're going to just cover high level, looking at your site here and the residents, and then we'll dig into those individual plants so you know more what to expect in the landscape this year. And then wrap up with all of those questions that were submitted. I've got some imagery and some answers for you to that. So let's get started. So one of the things that's really exciting about being surrounded by trees and nature is it's proven to reduce stress, to lower blood pressure, and to improve your overall well-being. And in different countries, they're actually prescribing forest bathing, like in Japan, for people to go out and spend time in nature. There's organisms in the air that the trees give off that actually is helpful, but also just improving your physical and mental well-being. So this was out of a magazine where they're just showing basically people who are gazing for 15 minutes or spending time out connecting to your natural landscape. You're having all of these different things. So more positive emotions, better moods, more vigor, a greater sense of personal restoration, just from viewing nature. So, and you guys have a great place to be. So these were our initial renderings that just show at full maturity what to expect and how this is going to be. Have you guys seen these before? No? Okay. Well, it'll be fun to share some of these. So that's the prairie, in about 3 or 4 years, when that is taller and more mature, that whole hillside will be filled in. So, and then you can kind of see the purple massing as that salvia and catmint also start to fill in. They will spread out and be able to really just make an impression come the springtime. And here you can see more as we studied looking at the woodland connection and then just views that we really wanted to create this corridor of green space and being able to incorporate some of the site amenities out there. We heard feedback that a dog park was of interest, so it was our pleasure to be able to include that in here, and the slopes worked out good. But there you can start to see the ribbon of the bioswale forming, and we're emphasizing that with the salvia and that purple, like a mixture of purple plants. So that will be exciting to see as it starts to really grow in this year. But just trying to site those buildings so that we're maximizing your views and really everyone gets kind of a green space view. And there you can see it a little bit more illustrated. We did explore putting a sculpture out in that green space, but I think they wanted to test out, like for events and just having that overflow space, how that would work for you first. And then this is just the site plan. So just trying to understand what the different seed types are and grasses that we're using out there, and just looking at it from a different perspective. To really see how we could integrate that bioswale. So it's kind of this mixture of a formal walkway paths and breaking the amenity spaces with the pergola, and then integrating this kind of natural way that water flows, mimicking similar to like a river or a creek, and how that could kind of wind through your site but still provide you those amenities. So as we talked about the different type of plant material out there, we're going to kick it off with some of the ornamental trees. This is a serviceberry, and so in spring they bloom with the white, and then in fall they get this really nice red leaf on it. And one of the things I might do is send Steve the landscape plan, so if you really wanted to study more where each of these trees are located, then it gives you a map so you can go to those trees. We do like to try to have, Iowa City actually is one of the few cities in Iowa who has a code on saying that you have to have so many trees on your site to promote diversity, so that if anything like the emerald ash borer, there's another tree type that will get a disease, that you're protecting yourself by having a lot more different types of trees in case something like that were to develop again. So that's why you're seeing, quite a bit different types of tree material out here. So this is that eastern redbud. I think you have one of these on site as a tree. So springtime, they'll do this. Now maybe, when it's a young tree, you're not gonna notice it as much, but over time, it will really fill in. And then they have these giant heart-shaped leaves that you can see here in the summertime. The river birch are the ones that we looked at that really line that curved turf area for the event space. Those are native and seem to do really well in our climate. So you get that great exfoliating bark that will add winter interest and the light colored bark there. And then they are considered a shade tree and will have that nice golden color in the fall. The Princeton Century Ginkgo, these are the trees we looked at right outside of the dog park. So at maturity, that's what they'll kind of look like, and they'll get really nice and gold and hang on to their leaves there for a while in the fall. They're one of my favorites. I just think they're really unique structure, and they've been around for a long time. American hornbeam, we'd consider this an ornamental tree. This one, it's a little slow growing, but it's a very strong tree. So again, it'll go red in the fall and just provide kind of a different aesthetic in the landscape. We did incorporate some white pines. These were just to the south side of the dog park that you'll see some evergreens around the site. So these do really well in our climate as well. If you ever do notice that they're getting a lot of brown needles at some point, usually they'll flip back and get green again. So don't be too alarmed. They will correct themselves. And they get nice, big, and tall. So the London plane tree, I think when we were out there, I was looking at my map, but so on the right side of the path, as you're headed toward that big overlook seating area, the plane trees were on the right, our quaking aspen were on the left side. So just to clarify that, because I think in our group, I may have switched those around. So these are the aspen on the other side. And when you can hear in the wind, they kind of shake on the leaves, and that's why they're called a quake. And these are native to our climate as well. We like to try to use native and adapted material as much as possible because our weather patterns are so extreme that the native plants seem to do better in surviving. Northern red oak is also native, so this will be a gorgeous tree. Oaks are a little bit more slow growing, so it'll take longer for this one to get to maturity. But you should already see this fall a nice red display. This is the Growlow sumac. This is the shrub that we saw along the building edge that will grow to be about 6 feet wide and really spread and just fill in as a nice mat. And these get to be about 2.5 feet tall. And then they go red in the fall. So again, trying to have a lot of different color and texture in the landscape to enjoy throughout the seasons. Spirea, so you have some of these along the parking lot area. They will have a pink flower throughout the summer. And then this particular type, this is an Anthony Water one, it will have this kind of plum look in the fall on its leaves. And these get to be about 2.5 to 3 feet tall. This is a northwind switchgrass. So you have some of these, and I'm thinking about recommending to integrate a few of these around that overlook to maybe hide, because I noticed when you drive in from the parking lot, you can really see the footings of that overlook. So these get to be about 6 feet tall, and they'll go golden like that in the fall. So that might be a quick fix to, while we wait for that prairie to establish, these are native and can kind of mix into the prairie there. They're actually using switchgrass as a biofuel. They're testing that out at Iowa State. So, Salvia, there's your two different types of salvia that you'll see out there. And as you can tell, it will start to fill in over time. So, and these were some renderings that we did just to explore how this will look. Nighttime, daytime type of venue. So I think it got pretty close to what we initially envisioned there. This is the feather reed grass along the dog park fence that we took a look at. That's pretty short right now, but by midsummer, you should expect to see the image on the left. That would be what it looks like throughout all summer. And then in the fall, it gets that nice golden plume look to it. And these are super hardy. We've had a lot of great luck with them. I'm sure you've seen them around town because they are very popular. They are not native, but they are adapted. This is another one, the dwarf fountain Hamlin grass. So just a shorter, different type of ornamental grass. Lawn Ambition has a fun name, blue grandma grass. So you will definitely see this out in your landscape. This is along the bioswale, so as you're entering from that north parking lot and walking down to the community entrance, this will be coming up on the left side of the walkway. We didn't make it quite down there, but these get to be about 2.5 feet tall and have this really nice warm look to it in the fall. So this is also native, just a different variety of the native form. There you can see on the left side where it's that brighter grass right there. That's where you can expect it. We have some side oats grandma grass. There's some of this in the Prairie area. And then there's a few concentrations around besides that. And that's because if you can see on the bottom right image that they have the little oats, then they're all on one side of a stem. That's why it gets its name. So this is the common wood sedge is what is in that bioswale. So when we looked out there on site, that green with the boardwalk that goes over, it'll form this type of mat so that you'll kind of get this really soft texture throughout there. And you don't have to mow it, it'll just stay that way and help root in and control some of that water that's flowing through. This is the allium that we saw that was starting to pop up. So maybe wait for it to see if it blooms. I don't think it's bloomed yet, has it? Have you noticed that, the big balls? Okay, so to be continued. Expect for that. And then there's the Walker's Low catmint that we saw out there. So that really fills in and provides a nice mat. It's one of the first spring bloomers, so you'll definitely see that popping up, and then it will continue to rebloom. And there you can see an image on the left side of how that masses in, complementing the salvia there. And there's a view from up above. Those are the river birch along the swale and the dog park. And there's more of a zoomed out view. So that was probably the original concept. I think, as we get through a project, we have to back off on the budget. But that's where you might want to consider the fabric material that you can purchase to just create some of a sunscreen there. And looking at some water features that could make some noise and help cover up that road noise. I can understand that, so. If you wanted to know about the bird bath, these are some of the questions that were submitted. This is kind of a modern bird bath there to the left, and I think right outside of your community space and one of the planter beds would probably get the most enjoyment for being able to see that maybe to the right or left there. So something to consider anyway. There was a question about woodland bulbs. So daffodils, crocus, these could definitely be integrated into the woodland character out there if you wanted more pops of color. I think there was at least 2 questions submitted about how do we add more color to those type of settings. So there's an array of different type of bulbs, not just limited to this. Iris are very deer resistant, so that could be an option for you as well. And they have a great leaf texture that lasts all year round, even when they're not blooming. This was what we talked about with the care of the prairie grass. So this is probably what you would expect in year 2, 3 on the lower level. There's a mixture of different types of plants in there in the range of about 3 to 4 feet tall, of ornamental grasses and the blooming plants. So this is what we usually recommend is the spot treatment with like the Roundup, but given the quantity of weeds at the moment, I'd say it's probably just worth hand pulling most of those so we don't kill any of the actual stuff we want to stay. I wanted to show you this diagram. This indicates to you how deep the roots get on these native plants. And this is really cool because it shows like how they can really soak up a lot of stormwater and how they can knit the soil together in order to help on those slopes so that they don't erode over time. And so this just shows you an array of different types of prairie plants and how deep they've studied to get them. So some can, get down there to 15 feet deep. I'd say a lot of ours are probably more in that 6 to 7 foot deep, but that's the benefit of those great prairie plants. And the question that was submitted too is, what are the wildflowers in the prairie mix that we have specified? So there is an array of different ones. The butterfly milkweed are the orange flowers that you might see. And if you want, I can get Steve a copy of the presentation if you want to kind of look over the list in more depth. Coneflower, very popular. You can see some of the daisies are in there. Coreopsis is a little yellow flower. Lupine's a purple flower. So there is going to be a lot of mix of color. The black-eyed Susan are in there, and they will spread out and populate as well. So over time, that prairie ecosystem will change, and you'll see different flowers in different years. And it's great pollinator habitat. So you will see butterflies and bees, and especially in Iowa, as that's a travel path, it's a very important ecosystem for insects. So another question was, how do we add more color into the landscape? A great way is annuals. If freestanding planters and add some annuals. Petunias, they have an array of color and they grow and they spread, so that might be an easy way, more cost effective, to help add some pops around there. You can put those in the planter beds as well. Bulbs like the iris and daffodils are another way to start kind of maybe filling in some more spaces and get a variety of some yellows and pinks and different things. We use a lot of daylilies and some asters, given on the right sunshade conditions, but daylilies are on the lower left there, and super easy, maintainable plant that's hard to kill. So usually important in these kinds of settings. So those are just some considerations. Another question was about transitioning to the woodland and what type of plants are good for that area. We like to use the sedges. That's an ice dance sedge up above, and it has a variegated leaf. That's really interesting, and sometimes it can be evergreen as long as we don't get too cold of winters. So that's a really nice plant that fills in. Ground cover with the bulbs. Bleeding hearts are deer resistant, shade tolerant, add a little bit of color. Shrubs, the bottom left there is a New Jersey tea. It is a native shrub. It gets its name because people did use their leaves to make tea. And chokeberry is another one. I don't have an image of it up here, but black chokeberry is a very hardy plant and can tolerate sun or shade. It comes in 3 feet to 5 feet sizes. So that could be something too that naturalizes and is native. And the ronia berry, if you've heard of the ronia, that's a chokeberry. And so you can harvest them and eat them. Or make a jam. That's what people use them for. They're supposed to be really good in antioxidants, I guess. And then understory trees, typically we use like a dogwood that can tolerate the shade, but still add, in springtime would have that color. They bloom in a white or pink. So those are some ideas if you wanted to add in more filler plant material out there. Next question was about what do we plant under trees? What are good species for that? So again, I love sedges, if you can't tell. They're just a really low maintenance plant. You don't have to mow it, and it will fill in over time. That's a Pennsylvania sedge down below. There's also ground covers like vinca, that's a pachysandra, lily of the valley, that tends to spread. So sometimes you have to be careful on the ground covers. If you don't maintain them, they will start to take over your grassed areas. And one thing to know if you are trying to look at, where you can add these in, our trees are little right now, so some of these are shade tolerant plant material. They like shade more than sun. So when the trees are little, we try to put stuff under them that can handle both, just because over time that sun can scorch them and kill a shady plant. So just something to keep in mind if you're considering putting stuff out there, check the sun and shade type labels. And then that other question about getting a pathway to some of the plantings, I wasn't sure if that was like on the other side of the bioswale to have something you could cross over, or
specifically, a lot of it I'm looking east. So there's the prairie grass, which under my bed is very sparse right now.
okay.
And then there's the trees. And so I think a lot of us on the east side, looking over that, we want some, we were thinking about shrubs. I was thinking of serviceberry.
Mm-hmm.
That will transition from the prairie grass to the trees. And then, because we'll have to maintain that for a couple of years to water it, we were thinking of access path.
Okay.
At least that's what I had in mind when I asked that question.
Sure. So that's something, probably at this point, I wouldn't do concrete, but you could do something naturalized. These are a couple ideas of just using some limestone as like stepping stones, or you can get these pavers and just put them in a row, one right after the other. That's not too invasive, where you're not having to bring equipment in necessarily to get something out there to.
And once they're established, we wouldn't need the path much.
True.
It's just that first year or two when we really have to do water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if it's a temporary application, then you might consider some like stone that then you could reuse somewhere else on site for another purpose. But yeah, that's a good question. And I think if I haven't seen the east side yet, I'll have to check that out after this. But if the grass is really struggling, we'll keep an eye on that here in the next month. Because after this rain, we might get a different result in the next few days.
A lot of the east side areas filled in very nicely.
Okay.
It's just kind of specifically below my bed.
Okay. Sure. So we might have to overseed some of those areas or consider something that can handle the shade if that's the problem. So, yes, question. Yeah. Okay. Sure. The question is, do we intend to get rid of some of the dead trees on the east side? I think in the wooded zone. Is that correct? Is it in the wooded area? So I would say maybe that's probably something to put on Oaknoll's list of things to take a look at. So are there other questions? This is kind of wrapping up. Yeah.
Is catnip edible for humans?
I would not eat it. I actually haven't looked it up if it's edible for humans, so maybe that's a good question to research. I know cats love it. That's why it gets its name. They love to roll around in it and.
Catnip is in the mint family, right?
Mhm. Yeah, so maybe the mint part you could. That could be edible.
Maybe I missed it, but the plantings on the south side of the visitor parking lot, between the parking lot and the ACT property. What are those plants?
On the south side. Let's see if I could pull that up. Oh. south side of the parking lot or elsewhere? Oh yeah, there's some Spirea shrubs in there. So those were the ones that bloom pink. Here, I can zoom this in and then see if I'm talking about the same place.
Do those grow then higher or?
The Spirea will get to be about 3.5 feet tall. And that was intended to help maybe screen some of the car lights, like if you are sitting in the green space, that they would be tall enough to help with those headlights. So those would be these right here. And then maybe that's Kentucky coffee tree instead of the hackberry. We'll have to go investigate. Either way, it's a good shade tree. So, oh, and then the Spirea are also up here, if you can see along that side of the parking lot. There's some of the white pines here on that north edge. There's a pin oak, I believe right there. So another type of the oak tree. We have the river birch, so if any of you are on that north side, you may notice those. And then those are those quaking aspen. Those are kind of repeated throughout that left side whale. Yeah.
Where does Oaknoll property end on that east side? Is it along that dotted line?
Yeah, let me zoom out here. And I can show you what our limits were, because this is the wooded edge limit, so it jogs a lot. But that gives you, probably where you see that seeding grading line stop is where the boundary is for property. So on the west side, again, it's a little, it jogs. But then I think you have quite a bit of terrain over there too, right? Doesn't it kind of slope off? So, and not everything, this is a little, we had more plants on the plan than initially got planted. So the swale, we had 3 different types of sedges initially, and then they seeded that. So we probably won't have as much variety as maybe we originally envisioned, but I think it will still have the same effect of all of that massing of the sedge. Any other questions? Yeah.
I just was wondering, for down the road, like with adding things, where are the water sources in the courtyard?
That's a good question. They have been placed. There are some hydrants on the outside of the buildings, because I think per code you have to have so many feet where you have a water spigot. I don't have that plan up at the moment, but I know it is indicated on a building plan. So I could send that information to Steve if you want to know more on that. I believe it's just, I know it was irrigated when it was initially installed, but we didn't plan for an irrigation system out here. So, natural. I don't know that Oaknoll did any different, did they? They didn't put irrigation in, right? Any other questions? I think patience is key. Yeah.
Speaking of putting some large planters in the center section, are you familiar with that?
I haven't heard about it yet, but, oh, yeah, a source for getting some, or?
I'm not aware of anything beyond the fact that they were speaking of there'd be some planters, so that were similar to what we have at the main area.
Okay, I'm not aware of like what the plan is for that.
Okay, I'll check with
Yeah. But that'd be a great spot for some of those annuals, you know, to get some color in there. That's good to hear. Oh, more question? Okay. Yep, back there.
3 large planters went in today by the south side of the parking area. Under building 1.
Yes, as you enter the garage, right?
3 large planters went in out there today.
Okay.
In the rock area.
Okay, great. I don't know what's planned for them. I know on other projects we've used like a type of a fountain grass. There's like a purple fountain grass that might get this tall with plumes on it, maybe in the center, and then you can surround those with other things.
That's exactly what we ordered
Oh,
from your landscape, with the purple fountain grass
and
and the petunias.
petunias.
They're supposed to be delivered soon. And then there's 3 planters on building 3, everything around the garage.
Great. Other questions? Well, I can't wait to see how this starts filling in this summer. I know that we'll want to come back and get some photos, and maybe we'll have some volunteer models from some of you to kind of activate the space. And we'll definitely need some dog models as well. But yeah, I'm excited to see how it evolves and just how you guys want to adapt it to make it your own as well. So I hear there's a gardening club. Is that correct? Committee? Okay. Good deal. Well, thank you for taking the time to learn more about the landscape, and I hope you enjoy it for years to come. So.